Hi everyone, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope that you're doing well. I hope you're having a great week. As we approach the eve of Halloween, I thought it'd be fun to do a video on The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. It's a book I absolutely love. I reread it earlier this month, and this is a book I've read a couple of times. I first read it, as a child, and absolutely loved it. The stories in here are fascinating. The way in which Bradbury takes a group of boys on Halloween and then through their costumes essentially allows us to explore the histories of human fear, human ideas around what we think of horror, ghosts, witches, gargoyles, mummies. Where do these ideas come from across history? And it really is just a beautiful and wonderful book that has so many different components to appreciate. As a child, I remember appreciating the thrill of this adventure, that it was frightening. There was this sense of danger and mortality around it, something I couldn't really appreciate as a kid, but that Bradbury was able to convey. And then when I reread it later on, it was just appreciating all the different ways around history and culture and even anthropology that Bradbury is allowing a kid to explore through this book. And so as I reread it, there's nostalgia, but there's just so much that I enjoy about the book. I want to read a quick passage. Give a sense of that energy. It's Bradbury, but it's Bradbury definitely for a younger audience. They ran down the ravine at a swift rush, all laughing, jostling, all elbows and ankles, all steamy, snorting roustabout to stop in collision when Tom Skelton stopped and pointed up the path. "There," he whispered. "There's the only house in town worth visiting on Halloween. There." "Yeah," said everyone, for it was true. The house was special and fine and tall and dark. There must have been 1,000 windows in its sides, all shimmering with cold stars. It looked as if it had been cut out of black marble instead of built out of timbers. And inside, who could guess how many rooms, halls, breezeways, attics, superior and inferior attics, some higher than others, some more filled with dust and webs and ancient leaves or gold buried above ground in the sky, but lost away so high no ladder in town could take you there. The house beckoned with its towers, invited with its gummed-shut doors. Pirate ships are a tonic, ancient forts are a boon. But a house, a haunted house, on All Hallows Eve, 8 small hearts beat up an absolute storm of glory and approbation. Come on. So you can see the language is quick, it zings, and yet there's vocabulary in there. Approbation. there's all sorts of words there that a child, can get the sense of adventure, but also wonder, like, hey, what does that mean? Let me go look that up in the dictionary. And that's the beauty of this book from Bradbury, is it really does have everything for so many different ages and audiences. Yes, rereading it, there are parts where I kind of chuckled and at the silliness of the language, the way they think about their friend Pipkin, and how he's the best of the boys, and the descriptions are a little bit ridiculous, but they're also so accurate for a 9, 10, 12-year-old. And that sense of thrill and adventure is here. But let's get to the actual Halloween tree. Backing off around the side of the house, they were astonished at the sounds it made. A whole rigmarole of whispers, squeaks, creaks, wails, and murmurs, and the night wind was careful to let the boys hear them all. With every step they took, the great house leaned after them with soft groans. They rounded the far side of the tree and stopped, for there was the tree. And it was such a tree as they had never seen in all their lives. It stood in the middle of a vast yard behind the terribly strange house, and this tree rose up some 100 feet in the air, taller than the high roofs, and full and round and well-branched, and covered all over with rich assortments of red and brown and yellow autumn leaves. "But," whispered Tom, "oh look, what's up in that tree?" For the tree was hung with a variety of pumpkins, of every shape and size, and a number of tints and hues of smoky yellow or bright orange. "Pumpkin tree," someone said. "No," said Tom. The wind blew high among the branches and tossed their bright burdens softly. "A Halloween tree," said Tom. And he was right. And so there are illustrations across the book. And the illustrations are part of what makes the book so fun, because we have all these different scenes from across human history. And so what's cool is the friends are dressed up in different costumes. As I said, there's a mummy, there's an ape, a skeleton, a witch, a grim reaper, a gargoyle. And the boys, this group of boys out supposed to be trick-or-treating, are led by a strange eldritch figure, Mr. Moundshroud, across human history. And so they see all the different ideas. So here we have humans finding fire. And so the first is the ape and this idea of cavemen. And, you know, what were the fears that people had? And how did people begin to first tell scary stories by the fireside once they had discovered fire? And it was no longer just about survival, but you could have a sense of community and gather around a fireside to talk to each other and remember things and remember stories. Remember what was beyond that circle of warmth and, you know, and light from the fire. Then there's Egypt with the mummies, and what were mummies? How did they make them? Why did we think they made them? And so they skip through time. We go into Samhain. I remember this was definitely the book that introduced me to Samhain. And so we jump forward, you know, to this Grim Reaper, and that's a really frightening chapter. We have witches, and Bradbury links witches. There are aspects of this that feel informed by Robert Graves and his takes on Greek myths, where Bradbury's going back and he's sort of showing maybe this is the view, but it's certainly the view he's going to push, just as Graves is. And there's a sense of fun to it. Of maybe this isn't entirely accurate, but it's certainly exposing, you know, a young reader to ideas, or taking an old reader back to those first, you know, encounters with ideas and really getting us to think. But I really love the final journey is to Mexico with Tom Skelton, and to celebrate the Day of the Dead. And the boys have this sense of realizing how community can exist, and how the community exists through that holiday, and through that remembrance. And they just have this really wonderful sense. And of course, it's all across, they're chasing their friend Pip, who has not come trick-or-treating with them. Pip, who's supposed to be the best of the boys. And there's this mystery on what's up with him. Like, you know, Mr. Moundtrout has said, maybe we can save him, or will he be lost forever on Halloween? And they've got to find him. And so they're chasing him through time as this occurs. They think they see him in different places. They think they see him, they find a gargoyle at one point on Notre Dame de Paris that looks like their friend Pip. And so it's just a really wonderful book. It's a really fun book. And so it was nice to return to it. Here's one last illustration. The references, Bradbury, of course, he makes his historical and anthropological references, cultural references, and those are really fun. But there's also references to all sorts of works. So he gets into, he talks about how the haunted house has a Marley knocker, and they reference A Christmas Carol with the idea that the knocker could, you know, become a face and talk to the boys. So that's a really fun sense. But there's also a way in which the story, you know, Bradbury has so many great avenues. He has this sort of more beautiful poetic science fiction that you find in the Martian Chronicles. There's that sense of almost like fabulous nostalgia that we find in Dandelion Wine, or you know, the horror in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Just a wonderful book, probably my favorite of Bradbury's books. But there's also that sense of the Russian fabulists that we see in Something Wicked This Way Comes, but especially in the Halloween Tree, where each of the stories has this little fabulous, you know, gem that it's containing. And we're unwrapping like one after another of these and enjoying each of them in a way that reminds me of writers, even like Nikolai Gogol, but other Russian writers as well. So this was The Halloween Tree. I hope everybody does have a great week, a great weekend, celebrate safely, and certainly I'm excited to return to this book with my daughters soon. I think they're just a little young for it now, but excited to return to it soon. And I'll throw a picture of them underneath the Halloween tree they found on our hiking last weekend. So all the best, everybody. Thanks.
1, 2, 3, jump. Not just up and down.